guys, today I'm going to be starting a new thing that I plan on doing, which is called Flicks. I often do book and movie reviews on my blog, and I figured that I would bring that to YouTube as well because it is something that I enjoy doing. I really enjoy looking at the adaptation and seeing the differences and what it means for the themes and the tones and what it is that this book is trying to do and whether that shifts when you make a movie because you have to cut out scenes and the structure is completely different. Now today I'm going to be discussing Carol by Patricia Highmith. The original title of this is The Price of Salt. I like The Price of Salt better and kind of wish that I had a copy of The Price of Salt instead of a copy of Carol, especially because this is the movie version and it's the only one I could get when I went to get this book. But what can you do? Now, a slight disclaimer, because with this one I find it incredibly important and I have thoughts on the themes of this that if you don't want to know anything about this book going into it, then you might not want to watch this video. However, I don't think that what I'm going to say is going to spoil the experience at all. This book is great even if you have seen the movie and you're going to go into the book. It's fine. I don't think that it can be spoiled. I'm not going to be talking about any major events, but if you don't want to know anything and you just want to read the book, that's fine. Come back when you have and let's have a discussion. Alright, let's start by talking about this book. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that at my bookstore, this was shelved in the mystery section. This is not a mystery book. This is a romance. There is zero mystery in this book, unless you count lesbians as a mystery. It even says on the back of this book, mystery/fiction. I don't know what part of this is a mystery. I'm not sure why it's shelved like that. I think because a lot of Patricia Highsmith's other books are sort of suspense fiction, mystery fiction, that this got shelved with them because that's where her books go, but it's a romance. It's a homosexual romance, but it is a romance. Aside from that weird kerfuffle, let's talk about the fact that this is a book about two women falling in love that was published in 1952. This is what I think is most important about this for LGBTQ++ fiction. The thing about this book is that it's an optimistic depiction of homosexuality. Obviously, homosexuality had appeared in books before this, but more often than not, those characters committed suicide, were murdered, were completely shunned from society, were outcasts in their own life, became incredibly depressed and couldn't do anything. While this is definitely not a happy, plucky-go-lucky, sunshine and rainbows ending to a book, it is optimistic. They stay together. And that's what I think is so important about this, that if you are a young lesbian woman or even a young gay man, it is important to see a representation of your sexuality that doesn't vilify or demonize you. Now let's talk about the book itself. It's literally just a romance between these two characters, Carol and Therese, or Therese, as I'm supposed to believe it's named. My middle name is actually Therese, so I had always pronounced it Therese, so I'm probably going to pronounce it that way. But in the film it was Therese, which is a little weird for me. Now, I didn't really love either character, even though I loved this book a lot. Therese, to me, was very just completely obsessed with Carol. She couldn't imagine a complex character that was Carol. She just thought that Carol was the most perfect, beautiful human being that there could ever be. Then again, Carol was this weird, distant, flighty, rich woman who flew into her life and took her away, and I can see why someone would fall in love with that, but I also know that there was more to Carol, even though we don't see it in this book very often. One of the things that I enjoyed about this is that you got to see what it was like from the perspective of someone who had been having thoughts about women all her life, but was still trying to do the right thing and date a man and do what is expected of her without ever really realizing that she could have something else. Now let's talk about the film. First off, that film is beautiful! Like, so many shots that are so good. And if you really enjoy the visual aspect of films, go see this film right away. I find it hilarious that it's rated R because of depictions of sexuality. Guys, lesbians are harmful. There's one sex scene and it's tasteful, like you see some side boob. That's almost on TV nowadays. It's just because it's two women, which is a problem that we're probably going to have to face in the future as well. Now, I want to talk about the way that Carol was portrayed in this film. First off, I really, really loved the fact that you almost never got to see Carol straight on. She was always seen through a windshield, behind glass, in a snowstorm, parts of her. You never got to see all of Carol all at once, and I want to read this section from the book to let you know why I think that was a really smart decision on the director of photography's part. She looked at the small pearl earrings, that were somehow no lighter than her hair itself, or her eyes. Therese thought her beautiful, though her face was a blur now because she could not bear to look directly at it. She got something out of her handbag, a lipstick and compact, and Therese looked at her lipstick case, golden like a jewel and shaped like a sea chest. She wanted to look at the woman's mouth, but the gray eyes, so close, drove her away, flickering over her like fire. For so much of this book, you don't get to see Carol in her entirety. You see bits and pieces of her, you see her beauty, you see her benevolence towards Therese, her sort of motherly mentorship towards her, but you don't get to see Carol in her entirety, and part of that is because Therese finds her too godlike to see in its entirety, and the film portrays that through taking a step back from what you would see. One of the problems I had with the film is that it showed a lot of the things that were happening to Carol outside of what was happening with Therese. Now, the book is from Therese's perspective, pretty much, so you don't get to see all of these things that are happening in the background. I do understand why they were shown, because it shows another experience of homosexuality, what it was like to be a married woman with a child who was going through a divorce because of her sexuality, and I appreciate that, but what was really interesting to me about this book was that you could sort of catch glimpses of what was going on in her life because of little throwaway lines that she said, but you didn't see it in its entirety. It was just sort of made apparent to you. Now, that being said, I want to talk about one of the things I think the film improved on. I think that the film did a better job of not making the men antagonists. Now, that being said, they're not super antagonistic in this book, but because it's so in Therese's point of view, she views everything these men are doing as attacks against her, attacks against what she wants, and that is a little problematic to me. In the film, because you have this third-person perspective, you are able to see that they are just reacting to something that is breaking down what they believed about their lives. These women were one way and they turned out to be a different way, and they can't completely accept that, and it's frustrating and angry. Their actions are more just a reaction to their status quo falling apart and them trying to maintain that. I think this book is really important. If you have any inclination at all towards reading it, definitely do that. If you want to see the film, also, it's beautiful and I really love it. Again, I don't think it matters which order you see it in because the plot is not so important in this book. It's about the characters and their growth and their relationship. And while you will know the trajectory of it, it's really about the journey and how they get there. I felt like this was a really great adaptation, that while there were things that were problematic with it, it definitely improved on some of the things that I was slightly uncomfortable with in the book, and it still showed the story and how this progressed in a way that I thought was extremely interesting and true to how it happened in the book. Films don't have to be a complete replication of the book, in my opinion, because then you're not watching something different. If you just want the same thing, read the book again. The great thing about different mediums is that you can get different experiences out of them, and that's definitely true in this case. Alright guys, I hope you liked this first book and movie review, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye guys!